Water at the Well. A short story from When the Bells Stop Ringing by Danny Ballon. The sun over Turkana County was a hammer. It beat down on the dry earth, baking the red dust until it cracked like old pottery. Zola adjusted the strap of the yellow jerry can on her forehead. Her back ached. She had walked 10 kilometers since dawn, her sandals kicking up clouds of dust with every step. It was Christmas Day, though the land didn't know it. The acacia trees were thorny and bare. The goats were thin, their ribs showing through their hides like the rungs of a ladder. Zola was 18. She wore the beaded necklace of her tribe, the Turkana, rows of red and yellow packed tight against her throat. She was afraid. The drought had lasted 2 years. Water was scarce, and when water is scarce, peace is fragile. The well, the only working borehole for miles, sat on the borderlands between the Turkana grazing grounds and the lands of the Pokot. There had been raids last week, men with guns, stealing cattle. Zola's father had told her to stay close to the manata, but the water containers were empty, and her little brother was crying with thirst. She saw the pump in the distance. It stood like a lonely metal skeleton against the horizon. She quickened her pace. If she was lucky, she would be alone. She was not lucky. As she neared the concrete apron of the well, she saw a figure, a woman. She was tall, draped in blue cloth, wearing the heavy brass earrings of the Pokot. The enemy. Zola froze. The wind whistled through the thorns. The other woman turned. She saw Zola. She didn't move. She stood by the pump, her hand resting on the iron handle. Zola's heart hammered against her ribs. She gripped the empty jerry can like a shield. She looked around. No men, no guns, just 2 women and the heat. Zola stepped forward. She had to. The thirst back home was a command she couldn't ignore. She walked onto the concrete slab. The pocket woman watched her, eyes narrowed, calculating. She was older, perhaps 30, with a face etched by the sun. Zola set her can down under the spout. The pump was an old, heavy manual lever. It took great strength to lift and depress, especially to get the suction going from the deep aquifer. Zola grabbed the handle. She pushed down. It barely moved. She grunted, putting her weight into it. Nothing. The mechanism was stiff with rust and dryness. She looked at the pocket woman. The woman looked at the handle, then at Zola's straining arms. Slowly, the woman stepped forward. She placed her hands on the handle next to Zola's. Her hands were rough, calloused, just like Zola's. They looked at each other. A silent agreement passed between them. 1, 2, 3. They pulled up together. The handle groaned. They pushed down. Creak, clang. Up, down, up, down. They found a rhythm. The iron handle rose and fell, powered by 4 arms. The friction warmed the metal, and then a gurgle, a splash. Clear, cool water burst from the spout, filling Zola's yellow can. The sound of the water was like music. It was the sound of life. When the can was full, Zola capped it. She moved it aside and kicked the pocket woman's can under the spout. They didn't stop. They kept pumping until the second can was full. They were sweating now, breathing hard in the heat. They stood there, 2 women from warring tribes, united by the weight of the water. The pocket woman reached into a pouch at her waist. She pulled out a small withered orange, a rare treat in the drylands. She split it in half. She held one half out to Zola. Zola stared at it. To accept food was to create a bond. She took it. To Eshe, Zola whispered in her own language, "Thank you." The woman nodded. She squeezed Zola's shoulder, a brief, firm touch of solidarity. They helped each other lift the heavy cans onto their backs, adjusting the straps. The weight was crushing, 40 pounds of water, but it felt lighter than the fear had. They turned in opposite directions. Zola walked north back to her people. The woman walked south. Zola didn't look back, but as she walked, she tasted the sweet, sharp juice of the orange. Around her the world was dry and harsh, and the men were still cleaning their guns. But here, on the dusty road, there was peace. Not a treaty signed on paper, but a peace made of water and sweat, carried on the backs of women who chose life over war.
A prayer for the heavy handle. Let us speak now to the sun that does not choose which skin to burn. Let us speak to the dust that coats the throat of the friend and the enemy alike. To the dry season that strips the land of its softness, leaving only the hard, cracking truth of our fragility. We are people of the tribe, of the banner, of the long memory of wrongs. We are taught to guard the perimeter, to hoard the resource, to look at the stranger across the border and see a thief. We build our identity on who we are against. Let us confess the desperate truth to one another. The thirst is the same. The body does not know the politics of the border. The parched tongue does not speak the language of the raid. When the water runs out, the history of the war evaporates, leaving only the raw, undeniable fact that we will die without each other. Let us ask for the strength to stand on the concrete slab next to the one we fear, to look into the eyes of the other and see not a threat, but a mirror, to realize that the handle of survival is too heavy for one pair of hands. It was designed that way. It requires the rhythm of two. It requires the synchronized sweat of the divided. May we have the courage to find the rhythm, to push down when the other pulls up, to let the friction of our labor wear away the rust of our hatred, to let the sound of the water splashing into the can drown out the sound of the arguments we inherited from our fathers. Let us learn the lesson of the well. We cannot drink the water of victory if the well is dry. We cannot survive in isolation. The pump works only when we work together. The life flows only when we lay down the shield and pick up the lever. So, let us share the ladle. Let us split the withered fruit. Let us drink from the same stream and realize that it tastes of grace. Let us walk back to our separate camps with lighter steps, knowing that the weight on our backs is a burden we helped each other carry. May we find that peace is not found in the absence of conflict, but in the presence of shared work. And may we remember that when the world is burning, the only way to cool it is to pump the water together. The well is deep, the hate is shallow. Drink.
If you've ever felt that absolute, crushing need for something primal like water, or maybe just a moment of peace, then you already understand the world this story puts you in. It's just an immediate, visceral experience. The first thing that hits you is the heat, just the sheer, overwhelming heat.
And it's not just a weather report, is it? It feels like a physical presence.
Exactly. It's an atmosphere of tangible, physical oppression. The landscape itself isn't just dry, it feels actively hostile.
Yeah, like it's trying to enforce scarcity.
Right, and survival here is never a given. It's a grueling moment-to-moment decision. And yet, somehow, the story pulls off this incredible paradox. In this place that's defined by tension and drought and inherited hatred, you find this sudden, shocking moment of pure grace.
A true instance of shared humanity right at the epicenter of conflict. It's that contradiction that really locks you in.
It really is.
That physical intensity is the author's primary tool, and you see it immediately. The story doesn't start with abstract ideas of good versus evil. It slams you right into the reality of the drought first. You're grounded in the sights, the sounds, the physical suffering of the drylands.
And that reality is the foundation for everything else that happens.
Precisely. It strips away all the layers of politics, of tribal loyalties, of these long-standing grievances, and it just boils the conflict down to raw bodily need.
Okay, so we absolutely have to start with that intense opening. The language is so deliberate, so muscular in setting the stakes. I mean, just look at how the sun is treated. It isn't just shining. It's personified as an instrument of violence. The sun over Turkana County was a hammer.
A hammer.
It beat down on the dry earth. That word beat is so aggressive, it tells you right away that the environment isn't passive. It's an antagonist.
It really is. And that personification carries so much emotional weight. If the sun is a hammer, then just existing in this place is a form of physical abuse.
Yeah.
The author needed to make that danger palpable. And that heat, that antagonistic heat, has these tangible destructive consequences on the land itself.
Right, with the earth baking the red dust until it cracked like old pottery.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that simile cracked like old pottery is just remarkably effective. It gives you such a precise visual.
You can picture it perfectly.
It's not just slightly drilled soil. It's fragile, brittle, completely broken, utterly incapable of supporting life. This harsh setting establishes right from the start that Zola's motivation is purely fundamental. It's survival.
Everything else has to take a backseat.
Everything, including fear.
That focus on physical reality just gets more intense with the description of scarcity, which is always linked back to the economy of the region.
Yes.
It's not just the bare acacia trees, it's the condition of the livestock. And in these communities, cattle and goats aren't just food, are they?
No, not at all. They're currency, they're wealth, they're the lifeblood of the community. So to see them suffering like this means the entire social structure is on the verge of collapse.
And the language makes that so unforgettable. I'm thinking of that specific devastating image.
The goat's ribs.
Yes, the goat's ribs showing through their hides like the rungs of a ladder.
It's a chillingly vivid image. And just for our listeners focusing on the language, let's break that down. Hides here just means the animal skin.
Right, the tough outer skin.
Yeah. And the simile rungs of a ladder is just brutal. A ladder implies structure, purpose, but here those lines are just the bony frame of a starving animal.
It makes the suffering so concrete you can practically see the bones.
You can. And it immediately raises the stakes beyond the theoretical. If the community's source of wealth is this close to death, then the people can't be far behind.
Which makes the risk Zola takes her whole trip to the well feel completely justified by desperation. It's just the perfect atmosphere the author has built. An environment that is actively antagonistic. And then woven into this brutal backdrop, we get this subtle, powerful contrast.
The one that underpins the whole story.
It's that simple declarative line. It was Christmas Day, though the land didn't know it.
And this is where this story elevates from just a survival narrative to something more profound.
I think so too.
Christmas is a global touchstone. You know, it's traditionally a time of peace, goodwill, charity, often abundance and grace.
And by setting the story on this day, the author creates this deliberate, painful dissonance.
Exactly. The natural world, the hammering sun, the cracked earth, is offering zero goodwill. None. It underscores the immense, almost superhuman effort the characters have to make to achieve even a tiny, fragile moment of peace.
So the spirit of the season isn't something they just passively receive. It has to be actively chosen.
Actively chosen, and you could almost say violently manufactured against all odds. It highlights that the spirit of unity has to be an internal human decision, chosen over the much easier inherited path of conflict.
That's a great point. If this was just a random Tuesday, the cooperation might feel polite, maybe conditional.
But because it's Christmas Day in a profound drought, the act of cooperation becomes a heroic existential act. It makes their achievement so much more meaningful. It reminds us that grace sometimes requires grit.
This setting, this timing, it makes that shared effort at the well feel not just necessary, but almost spiritual.
In its defiance of the environment, yes.
Okay, so now let's turn to Zola, our protagonist. She steps into this brutal setting, and she's introduced not just as an individual, but as an embodiment of her community's urgent need.
Right. She's 18, from the Turkana tribe, and we know she's already walked 10 grueling kilometers.
And she carries the visual markers of her identity. That traditional beaded necklace, described specifically as rows of red and yellow.
And the author uses those details so meticulously. Her physical state, the aching back, the long walk that establishes her dedication. But the necklace,
Yeah, the red and yellow beads.
that signals not just identity, but allegiance. In many communities in this region, those colors and patterns are visual declarations of lineage, of status, of tribal belonging.
So they immediately identify her to both friend and foe.
Exactly, emphasizing that she's a representative of the Turkana people, not just Zola, the person.
And this leads us to that critical tension that defines her whole journey. The conflict between the tribal mandate and just basic personal necessity. She was told to stay close to the manada.
And let's just clarify for our listeners, a manada is a traditional Turkana settlement or homestead.
Sort of a small, fortified village.
Yes, often with huts packed closely together, sometimes circled by thorn bushes for defense. It represents safety, tradition, and following the communal rules.
So her father, speaking for the community, tells her to stay there. He's prioritizing security.
And adhering to the tribe's political stance against the neighboring Pokot. Staying near the manada is about self-preservation through isolation.
But she defies that command. And the reason why is so powerful.
It's because of an even higher, non-negotiable command, the survival of her family. The text is so specific. The water containers were empty, and the crucial detail,
Her little brother was crying with thirst.
that single line is a masterstroke of motivation. It just instantly elevates the stakes from a dangerous political move to the absolute primal need to sustain life.
Her motivation becomes biologically pure.
Exactly. Survival trumps political loyalty. The thirst of an innocent child is the moral engine that drives her forward.
And that journey takes her directly to the flashpoint. Right on the borderlands between the Turkana and the Pokot. The danger isn't abstract. It's reinforced by recent violence. There had been raids last week, men with guns stealing cattle.
This region is just defined by resource conflict, and the drought transforms that, the only working borehole for miles into the most precious strategic asset imaginable.
So when Zola arrives, her fear is completely rational.
It's demanded by the environment. Her first thoughts are defensive.
Yeah.
And then she sees the other woman.
And the way the author introduces the second character is so intentional, she's immediately labeled the enemy.
Not by her name, not by her character.
By her tribe.
Exactly. She isn't an individual at first. She is a set of visible markers belonging to the opposing Pokot tribe. The description is precise, tall, draped in blue cloth, heavy brass earrings.
All characteristic of the Pokot women.
And by establishing her through these tribal identity markers before we learn anything else, this story just highlights the immediate inherited nature of the hatred and distrust Zola feels.
To Zola, this woman's identity is synonymous with a lethal threat.
It mirrors the reality of conflict everywhere, doesn't it? We see the uniform, the flag, the cultural signifier, long before we ever see the individual human being underneath it.
So that inherited hatred is this invisible, suffocating weight that both women are carrying. It makes the empty jerrycans they're holding feel light by comparison.
It creates the perfect, terrifying scenario for a standoff. It's not just two thirsty people. It's two solitary, unarmed representatives of warring groups meeting alone in the most vulnerable circumstance imaginable.
The tension at that well is just, you can feel it. It's so palpable. Zola sees the Pokot woman, who's already there, just resting her hand on the pump's iron handle. And everything seems to stop. The only sound is the wind whistling through the dry thorns. This is the moment of maximum danger.
It is. Zola's heart hammered against her ribs.
What stands out here for me is how the well, which should be a source of life, becomes the most likely place for death.
The author uses that moment of frozen suspense so masterfully. Zola's fear is so strong it becomes physical. Her immediate instinct, driven by those recent raids, is defense.
Right, she grips her empty yellow jerrycan like a shield.
And that detail is so critical. A jerrycan is just a container for water. But the fact that she's using an empty vessel as her only shield is profoundly telling.
An empty shield, it tells you everything about her desperation and her vulnerability.
It's the ultimate signal of desperation. She has no weapon, no backup, nothing but the primal need of that child crying for water back home.
And yet, despite that vulnerability, she doesn't retreat.
No, she sets her can down right at the base of the pump, which is a nonverbal act of intent. It's a challenge. It says, I am here for life, and I will risk everything for it.
She throws the weight of her family's survival against the threat of tribal enmity.
And then the environment introduces a third antagonist, the mechanical failure of the pump. Zola grabs the handle, and she realizes it's an old, heavy manual lever, stiff with rust. She strains, she puts her full weight into it, and nothing.
Just the stubborn refusal.
This mechanical failure is the true turning point of the whole story. It's such a powerful literary motif. The barrier to life isn't actually the Pokot woman.
Yeah.
The barrier is the pump, which resists isolated effort. The pump, stiff with rust and dryness, is a metaphor for the history of conflict itself. It's frozen by neglect and animosity.
So the handle is heavy because it was never meant to be operated alone.
Exactly. It serves as this literal and figurative hurdle that demands collaboration before we'll give up the water. The very physics of survival are demanding unity.
And that's the moment where shared physical reality just overrides decades of inherited history.
It is.
Yeah.
Because Zola is straining and failing. And the Pokot woman, in that crucial moment, she looks not at Zola's tribal markers, but at her straining arms.
She sees the effort.
She sees the failure. It's an objective assessment of physical need, totally separate from political allegiance. And that observation is the key to the silent agreement that follows.
Which brings us to the core moment.
Yeah.
The Pokot woman doesn't speak. She doesn't offer a treaty. She just moves.
She steps forward slowly, and the action is so meticulous. She places her hands on the handle next to Zola's.
That's the instant the whole narrative pivots.
It is. It's a choice born not of forgiveness, but of pure necessity. Words carry the weight of history. They're too dangerous. But the language of labor
Is universal.
It is. The common thirst is a truth that is far more urgent than historical enmity. The author explicitly calls it a silent agreement passed between them.
The threat is still there, but the immediate need for water has just pushed fear aside. Their hands meeting on that cold, rusty metal. That's the real beginning.
The transformation from confrontation to collaboration, it feels so earned, not sentimental.
Absolutely.
The author doesn't suggest they suddenly love each other, only that they acknowledge the fundamental reality that they share the same fate if they don't work together.
That rusty, heavy lever becomes a bridge.
Built not with diplomacy, but with the sweat of shared desperation.
And once that silent agreement is made, the story just settles into this deep, mechanical, hypnotic rhythm. The action is described in these simple, synchronized terms. 1, 2, 3, up, down, up, down.
That repetition, that shared labor, is the immediate product of their trust. The friction of the movement even begins to warm the metal handle. The author uses this rhythmic, almost poetic language here to mirror the pump action. It builds a sense of momentum and then finally relief.
And that synchronized effort creates a powerful physical bond.
It does. The text summarizes the theme perfectly when it says the action is powered by 4 arms. It's a simple phrase, but it encapsulates the central moral lesson.
Essential cooperation.
It takes the conflict out of the realm of abstract tribes and puts it into the realm of human bodies. 4 arms, fulfilling a shared biological need.
2 half efforts equal 1 complete outcome.
Exactly, and the reward for this cooperation is purely sensory. It's auditory. This is the moment of grace made manifest.
Creak, clang, and then a gurgle, a splash. That sound, the gurgle, the splash, is the auditory climax. It's the undeniable proof that their choice was correct.
It's the objective truth they needed. The sound of the water is described as being like music. It was the sound of life.
And that is the key emotional payoff.
Because the water itself is unbiased. It doesn't judge. It only flows when the pump is worked correctly. This response validates their choice to cooperate over the inherited choice to fight.
And here's where Zola's choice moves beyond self-interest to genuine reciprocity. Her can fills up, she caps it, she's secured the water for her brother.
Her mission is technically complete.
She could leave, but she doesn't stop. She immediately kicks the Pokot woman's can under the spout.
And that is the defining act of selfless mutual service. It seals that silent agreement far more effectively than any spoken word ever could.
It's reciprocity without a request.
Yes. The pumping continues, fueled by their shared energy, until the second can is also full. This shows that their cooperation wasn't conditional. It was a shared commitment to complete the task for both of them.
And now they're standing together, sweating, breathing hard.
Described as 2 women from warring tribes, united by the weight of the water.
That unity, forged in sweat and effort, it feels so much stronger than any abstract political loyalty.
Because it's physical, it's real. And that continued effort until both are satisfied is what justifies the profound act of solidarity that follows.
They haven't just negotiated a ceasefire.
No, they've created a new, temporary reality defined by mutual support. They established this profound nonverbal dialogue through labor, and that new reality supersedes the old one defined by hate.
Okay, so the functional task is complete, they have the water, and now the relationship transitions from transactional cooperation to genuine human solidarity. The Pokot woman reaches into her pouch and pulls out a small, withered orange. This is such a powerful image.
The orange is the ultimate symbol of fragile generosity in a land of scarcity. It's described as a rare treat in the drylands, which immediately establishes its value.
Right.
But the fact that it is withered is crucial. It contrasts so sharply with the cool, clear water they just pumped. It's an imperfect, slightly shriveled gift, but its imperfection just underscores the depth of the generosity.
In a time when every single resource is precious.
Exactly. She splits it and offers half to Zola.
And Zola understands the gravity of this immediately. The text says, to accept food was to create a bond. Why is that so significant in this context?
Well, culturally and symbolically, sharing food elevates their temporary alliance into a deep, personal commitment. It's a gesture that says, I trust you enough to share the scarcity that sustains me.
It's a small, sweet treaty signed in fruit juice and sweat.
That's a great way to put it. It signifies mutual respect and trust across a dangerous tribal divide. It's a physical manifestation of goodwill that no official delegation could ever replicate.
And the exchange of thanks is so beautifully minimalist. Zola uses her own language, whispering, Ash, thank you.
It's quiet, personal, immediate. And the Pokot woman's response is purely nonverbal and physical. She nods and gives Zola a brief, firm touch of solidarity on the shoulder.
That touch just confirms the unspoken trust they've established.
There are no grand speeches about peace, just an acknowledgement of shared effort and gratitude, a recognition that says, we did this together.
Then they face the final burden. Lifting those heavy cans onto their backs, adjusting the straps, we're reminded of the physical weight, 40 pounds of water.
40 pounds is the factual weight, but the emotional calculus is the true genius of the ending. They carry this crushing burden, but the narrator gives us the ultimate emotional payoff.
The burden felt lighter than the fear had.
And that is the core message. The fear, the inherited hatred, the paranoia, the anticipation of violence, that was the heaviest weight they carried.
And the shared practical effort successfully lifted that fear.
They replaced the emotional burden of animosity with the physical burden of life-sustaining water. And that realization is just incredibly potent.
The resolution is so quiet. They turn and walk in opposite directions, without looking back, heading back to their still warring communities. But Zola, walking home, tastes the sweet, sharp juice.
And the story creates a profound contrast here that connects back to that theme of Christmas and choice. The men, we are told, are still cleaning their guns elsewhere, perpetuating the cycle of violence.
But here, in the small sphere of necessity and cooperation, peace was achieved.
The author deliberately contrasts the violence of men with the life-giving choice of women. This peace isn't political, and it isn't permanent.
It's practical.
It is. A peace made of water and sweat, carried on the backs of women who chose life over war. It's a powerful statement that true functional peace often begins not in high-level diplomacy, but in personal necessary choices made on dusty roads.
It shows that the true engine for change often starts not with abstract morality, but with pragmatic, sweat-soaked necessity.
Definitely.
And then the story concludes with this profound shift in tone and form. It moves from narrative action to a deep, reflective piece called A Prayer for the Heavy Handle.
Yeah, it's like an internal document that captures and crystallizes the immense lessons Zola and the Pokot woman just lived through. It's the story's philosophical manual.
That's a perfect way to describe it.
It functions as a philosophical deconstruction of human nature and conflict. It starts by grounding itself again in that hostile reality, addressing the sun, the dust, but it quickly pivots.
To confessing the nature of inherited conflict.
Yes. The lines are so raw, aimed right at the concept of tribalism itself. We are people of the tribe, of the banner, of the long memory of wrongs.
We are taught to guard the perimeter, to hoard the resource, to look at the stranger across the border and see a thief.
We build our identity on who we are against.
That is just a brilliant, brutally honest articulation of identity built on opposition. It describes the very foundation of Zola's initial fear.
It's the pathology of scarcity applied to identity. And the prayer confesses this inherent human tendency to define ourselves by our enemies, which ultimately just perpetuates the drought, both physical and spiritual.
But it sets up that confession only to introduce the essential truth that the drought forced them to recognize.
The universality of thirst.
Which leads to what I think is the story's central, unforgettable moral lesson, one of the most powerful quotes in the entire piece.
The body does not know the politics of the border, The parched tongue does not speak the language of the raid.
It's just the philosophical zenith of the entire story, isn't it?
It is. It uses the pure, undeniable biological reality of the body to just annihilate political ideology. Thirst, hunger, pain. They are the great human equalizers.
And when you're faced with the raw, undeniable fact of dying without water, all the historical arguments and tribal banners just become meaningless.
They evaporate, just like water in the heat. The prayer then says explicitly that when the water runs out, the history of the war evaporates, leaving only the raw, undeniable fact that we will die without each other.
That's the core truth unveiled by scarcity. Self-preservation in this extreme setting demands unity.
And that realization naturally brings the focus back to the physical mechanism that literally forced their union, the pump handle.
The prayer suggests this need for cooperation isn't just a happy accident, it was by design.
Right. The metaphor of the handle is deepened from a rusty lever to a spiritual instrument. The prayer asks for the strength to realize that the handle of survival is too heavy for one pair of hands. It was designed that way.
That phrase, "it was designed that way," is huge. It suggests a higher law, that survival is inherently cooperative.
Yes. The pump requires the rhythm of two, because human life itself requires the synchronized sweat of the divided. It's a call to look past the superficial differences, the brass earrings, the red and yellow beads, and recognize the profound symmetry of shared existential need.
It commands us to look into the eyes of the other, the one we were trained to hate, and see a mirror.
And that transition from seeing a threat to seeing a mirror, that's the highest form of recognition.
And that recognition allows them to move into the physical process of forgiveness and labor.
An idea that is captured in those moving lines about overcoming historical animosity through physical effort. The story insists that change requires work.
Let's just dissect that one perfect line. To let the friction of our labor wear away the rust of our hatred.
It's so concise, but so loaded with meaning.
It really is.
Hatred is personified as rust, a slow, pervasive, corrosive layer that covers the essential machinery of human connection. Rust is inertia. It's the result of standing still.
And how do you remove rust? Not by thinking about it.
No, not by passive reflection or soft words, but by the active, abrasive force of friction. By the sheer grinding effort of working together. The physical act of pumping water is presented as the literal antidote to historical animosity.
You have to physically work the hate out of the system.
And the noise of the water itself, that gurgle and splash, the sound of life, it must drown out the sound of the arguments we inherited from our fathers.
So the immediate truth of life has to overpower the echoing lie of generational conflict.
Exactly. Action, shared labor, is the necessary precursor to peace, not just good intentions.
And the final wisdom synthesized in the prayer focuses on that choice between isolation and connection. The conclusion is the practical, earned lesson of the well.
The pump works only when we work together. The life flows only when we lay down the shield and pick up the lever. It's a direct, practical instruction.
You cannot succeed in guarding the resource if, in doing so, you let the well run dry through isolation. Victory in isolation is impossible.
And that final, short, provocative sentence that leaves you just mulling over everything.
The well is deep. The hate is shallow. Drink.
It synthesizes the entire message perfectly. The enduring sources of life and grace, the deep well, are far more substantial than the temporary human-made conflicts, the shallow hate.
It's a command, an exhortation to choose the deep, essential source of life over the superficial, corrosive conflict.
It reminds us that true peace isn't the absence of struggle, it's the presence of shared productive work, especially during a season that celebrates unity, regardless of background or faith. The story offers a profound, real-world model of what grace looks like when it is hard-won.
It's just a phenomenal piece of storytelling. It offers so many layers of meaning that force you to confront your own assumptions about who your enemies are and how much the physical realities of life really define our moral choices. It's about burden and choice and finding common ground when everything, the environment, history, tribal mandate, is telling you to stand apart.
We hope you related to this story. If these moments of quiet connection and hope resonated with you, we're thrilled to tell you that the full collection, When the Bells Don't Ring by Danny Ballin, is now available on Amazon and everywhere books are sold. Danny wrote this book to bring a little light to the quieter, sometimes harder moments of the season. It makes for a truly meaningful Christmas gift for anyone who loves literary fiction and heartwarming tales. You can find the link to buy or gift a copy right now in the description. Thank you for listening and for reading. We'll see you in the next episode. Never stop learning and hoping with English Plus Podcast.